afternoon all, and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Cabinet meeting on the 1st of December 2022. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. If I can remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and that this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise when other participants are speaking. If any participant wishes to speak, they should raise their hand either on screen or using the digital function, and we should only use the chat function to highlight any technical issues or attract the attention of the chair, myself, or Democratic Services Officer. Before I go on into the main meeting, I'd just like to mention that today is World AIDS Day, and the Vale Council is delighted to be part of the leadership group for Fast Track Cardiff and the Vale, which is a groundbreaking voluntary organisation working to eradicate HIV and the stigma of HIV by 2030. HIV has changed. U equals U, which actually means that with effective treatment, undetectable is untransmissible. And GPs in the Vale have signed up to an innovative pilot, which is called Texting for Testing, in which everyone over the age of 16 will receive a text inviting them for a confidential test by post. In fact, GPs in the Western Vale were the first to participate in this pilot, and feedback has been excellent. So when you receive a text, please apply for a test. I've already got mine, I'll be doing it shortly. So without further ado, we can move on to the agenda for today's meeting. And the first item is apologies for absence. I can see we're nearly all here, but I do know that Councillor Williams has been delayed with a ministerial visit and should be joining us shortly once that concludes. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of November 2022. So can I take those as a true record? Yeah. I think your sound's a bit quiet again, Bronwyn. Have you got any headphones?
I'll put those on then. I'll get in touch with my team.
I can hear you if I concentrate, but it probably isn't good for the recording if you can try that, or you can come and sit next to me.
Oh,
We'll share a computer. Right, so moving on to agenda item 3. That's declarations of interest. And I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 11. That's the shared cost additional voluntary contributions scheme, AVCs, and I'd like to declare a personal interest, but I have exception under the members' code of conduct, so it's not a prejudicial interest, and can remain and vote on this item. Is there anyone else? Rhiannon.
I'd like to declare an interest in item 11 as a member of that pension scheme. I don't know if I have dispensation to vote, to speak and to vote on it.
Yes, you will. If for the same reason as me, there's an exemption under the members' code of conduct.
Right.
And so while it's a personal interest, it's not a prejudicial interest. So you're allowed to remain in the meeting and vote.
Thank you.
Who's next? Ruba, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd like to make a similar declaration. I have personal interest in agenda item 11, as I'm also a member of the pension scheme. But as we've just heard, it's not prejudicial under the code of conduct, so I will be able to take part in the discussions around it.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you very much, Leader. I also like to declare a personal interest in agenda item number 11. As this interest is a personal interest, I will then be allowed to speak and vote on this matter, if needed.
Thank you. And Bronwyn.
The same for myself, Leader. It's declaring a personal interest in item number 11, and the same thing is personal interest and not prejudicial, so better stay and vote.
Super, that's great. So that's that sorted, and we can move on to agenda item 4, and this is one of a number of references that are before us today. The first one is a reference from the Governance and Audit Committee on the 24th of October, and that was a course to update Audit Wales work programme timetable for 2022-23 for the Vale of Glamorgan Council, and it relates to the fact that Audit Wales, as the nominated auditor for Vale of Glamorgan, was required to undertake work in relation to a number of areas which include, which were listed in the Vale of Glamorgan annual audit plan, and that is things like the audit of financial statements, value for money, continuous improvement and sustainable development principle. The appendix to the report, Appendix A, outlines course 2 progress, and it also the timetable, which is aligned to the Vale of Glamorgan annual audit plan for this year. The audit committee noted the contents of the report, and they've sent it to us for our oversight. And so, having reviewed the report, I would also move that we note. And is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you. And are we all happy with that? That's great. Agenda item 5 is another reference from Governance and Audit Committee on the 24th of October. And this is the update for the Corporate Risk Register, which is quarter 1. And you know, these reports are very important because we're in an ever-changing environment. So it's important that we are aware of the risks as they are currently, and their likelihood and their impact. And that is laid out fully in the report. And there was discussion over the relative priorities of the risk. And that there were some risks that had moved up, some that had moved down. So in terms of, you know, they discussed the direction of travel, which was saying that, you know, most risks have stayed static, but things like school reorganisation, workforce risks that have increased, and then things like information security, COVID and deprivation of liberty safeguards have gone up, and the Wales Community Care Information System risks have decreased. So after discussion, the committee actually recommended, and it's interesting because originally the report recommended that the deprivation of liberty safeguards would be removed from the risk register, but actually went on discussion, the committee decided to keep those in. So that the committee decided to recommend to Cabinet that the Community Care Information System, which is WCCIS, is removed from the register, and the cost of living risk be included. And then they also said that they wanted to do some more work to focus down on some of the risks related to Project Zero, so that they want to reframe the environmental sustainability risk to Project Zero on the register. And they've made that recommendation for us. So I'm quite happy to concur with that and recommend that in relation to the risk register, that in fact we remove the Wales Community Care Information System risk from the register, include the cost of living risk and reframe the environmental sustainability risk to Project Zero on the register. So I'd move.
I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you. Are we all happy on that? So agenda item 6, making sure I get all of them on in the right order, is the reference from Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee. That was on the 7th of November, and in relation to the Housing Support Programme strategy. This is one of those strategies that we're required to produce by Welsh Government. And it actually outlines the strategic direction of the local authority in relation to housing related support services, and the report that's actually attached, or the strategy that's attached, outlines a single strategic approach both to homelessness prevention and housing support services. There were a number of discussions within it which was quite interesting, and one of them was mentioned was that the cost of bed and breakfast accommodation within the Vale is currently £2.3 million a year, and this follows on from the huge increase in recognised homelessness that occurred during the pandemic, and we are working towards developing accommodation for people that are homeless, but single homeless people predominantly are housed within bed and breakfast accommodation. There was discussion on the nature of modular accommodation used, and Cabinet would be aware of some of the stuff that we built in Court Road that's been hugely successful. And there was a query on whether or not that would be shipping container style accommodation. And it was clarified that no, that wouldn't be, is that we actually use modular units that are prefabricated off-site and brought onto site to provide accommodation. It's speedily constructed, it's well insulated, and it's of a good quality. So the scrutiny committee, they noted the housing support programme strategy, but they also referred the report or the strategy to us for approval and adoption, and that they intend to review it on a 6-monthly basis. I'd be absolutely delighted. It's a good strategy. I'd be absolutely delighted to move it for approval and adoption. And I'm just wondering, Margaret, have you got any comments on that?
I'll definitely second that.
I thought you might. I thought you might. Are we all happy on that? Yeah. Agenda item 7 is a reference from Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 16th of November. And that's when they reviewed the financial strategy 2023-24 and the medium-term financial plan refresh. So that was the updating of the medium-term financial plan. It was a really interesting discussion, and I enjoyed attending that committee. The committee's comments are laid out on pages 2 and the top of page 3, and you know, it's worth having a read of those. There was one that I felt was actually worth mention, and that's probably about halfway down on page 3, and it talks about mitigating the use of external consultants, and it suggests that you know, the council could actually look at greater forecasting of what skills are needed when, and in order to train in-house staff. And I think it's actually, this is not only been a consideration in budget discussions recently, but also if you remember when we were looking at the draft annual delivery plan for next year, one of the cross-cutting themes that we put on there was organisational resilience, and having the right people in the right places. But this organisation is a very lean organisation. 12 years of austerity does that. And sometimes when we talk about a team, we're talking about 1 or 2 people. So that when we take on extra projects, there is often a need to bring in additional capacity. Where possible, we will bring in capacity to backfill so that our officers that do have the skills both get the opportunity to gain expertise in a particular area, and can carry forward projects that actually they probably developed in the first place, that they probably put the framework together. So it is something that is very important to us, and we think very carefully about. I mean, we talk about consultants, but it's using extra resources. Where do we get extra resources? Do we employ somebody full time that we might only need for 3 months, or do we find other ways of doing it? And in doing so, do we use our staff? I don't know if the chief executive is on the call. I think he might be at the ministerial visit as well. So no, he's not here. So otherwise, he might have wanted to make a comment on that. But I'm sure that's something that we'll revisit. There are a number of recommendations that were made by the scrutiny committee in terms of things that we might want to look at. All of those are being fed into the budget working group as we go forward with discussions on the budget for next year. So I think on that point that bearing in mind, so I recommend that the points raised by, or recommendations of the scrutiny committee are fed to the budget working group, and otherwise we can note the report.
I'll second that, Leader.
Your second. Everyone happy? Yeah. Agenda item 8 is minutes of a meeting of the Glamorgan Heritage Coast Advisory Group, and I do admit to this being, I wouldn't say sad, but it's regrettable. I've historically always been a member of this group, and I absolutely love it. It has such amazing discussions, and you learn so much about what's going on in the Heritage Coast and in our countryside division. So I'm always interested to read it. So if you're into that sort of thing, worth having a look at it. But I think that the one thing that I did note on page 4, at the top of page 4, and it was saying that the leader be asked to make representations to Welsh Government seeking additional funding to assist with the maintenance and upkeep of the coast path in the Vale of Glamorgan area. Well, we do actually receive funding. We receive funding from a couple of sources, Natural Resources Wales and Welsh Government. But I'm very happy to write to the Minister, drawing attention to the success of the Heritage Coast, and also inviting them to visit if they have some spare time to see the superb work that's going on there. So if I can amend, or if I can make that recommendation, and also recommend that we note the report. But I can see Gwyn's hand up, so you want to come in, Gwyn, on this, because you're a member of this committee, aren't you?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it's quite a challenge, the Heritage Coast across the Vale of Glamorgan, because the cliff these days is breaking in places, and as fast as we're moving the path back from the cliff edge, again we have another fall. Recently we had a fall down at Southern Down, and the footpath in Boverton has broken away, and you have to go down on the beach actually at the moment to continue your walk. So if you go so far and the tide is in, I'm sorry, but you won't get across. So it is a problem, and it's demanding a lot of extra money. So I would support you in that attempt to get more funding in the Vale, because it is a lovely area to walk, and there's hundreds do go out every day on the coastal path, and it's a wonderful facility, and it's well-being for people because they exercise and enjoy themselves. So I will support you. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwyn. Great. And agenda item 9 is a meeting of the Joint Consultative Forum that, again, quite in-depth discussions over a whole range of items, whether that be absence, well-being, menopause at work, the living wage increase, etc., which said are all worth review, because it is at the committee that we have quite in-depth discussions with union colleagues. I think that all there is for us to do on this one today is to note the report, though.
I'll second that, Leader.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And Gwyn, did you want to speak? Oh no, you're agreeing. That's great. Agenda item 10. You get a break from my voice now. This is Cardiff Bay Advisory Committee. This is minutes of the meeting, and the chair, the newly appointed chair of the committee, is Mark. So I'll hand it over to you for your comments, Mark.
Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, I was very glad to be appointed to this advisory committee. And basically, this advisory committee is a group of stakeholders, which includes the Vale Council. It also includes Penarth Town Council, Cardiff Council, and various other organisations which have an interest, like the Waterfront Partners, the RSPB, and other people. Now, basically, this meeting occurred in late October. It was going to be originally an earlier date, but because of the death of our late Queen, it had to be postponed. But nevertheless, we tried to meet at least quarterly throughout the year, and we're looking to probably meet in January on Teams, but probably in March, we hopefully meet face to face. We also hope to have a visit around the actual bay itself, to go on a little tour on a boat, to look around and to see the environmental conditions, because very much this committee is very much concerned about the quality of the water in this particular area. And what I'm pleased to say is that actually the fish, including some salmon, are now going up the stream, which is great, and they're actually using the fish path, which is a really good thing. But nevertheless, we do have some concerns, because obviously, because of climate change, the water temperature went up to almost 24 degrees at one point. It's much better now, it's much more stabilised, but obviously that's very high, and that does have challenges. Also, the water level was quite low because, as you know, we had very much a summer where we had very little rainfall, and that affected the Bowers to a certain extent. But I'm pleased to say Lesson Argene has gone, as you can tell by a cold day today, and we had fairly wet conditions recently, that's very much recovered. We also had discussions about oxygen ratings, and of course that is normally not a problem, because the great thing about the actual water quality in this area is very much improved, because it's oxygenated as well. But we got these little pools, and then if you go to the Bowers, you see these pools go up, and you see the actual, which is really good for the fish, as you can imagine, and the wildlife. We also report any pollution incidents and investigations, and we also obviously deal with other interesting areas, such as the nuclear power station development as well. So what I like to do now is just that we note this report, and I look forward to the next meeting, which will be in early January. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm happy to second that.
Thank you.
And there's no dissent, so that's fine. So moving on to the reports proper. The first one is agenda item 11, and that's relating to shared cost additional voluntary contribution scheme. And this is brought forward as a request for an amendment to the pension discretions to allow for the introduction of a shared cost AVC. scheme. The standard AVC scheme is run by Prudential, who've confirmed that this can now be extended to the shared cost scheme. It's a salary sacrifice scheme which enables the employer to save on national insurance contributions and apprenticeship levy, if that's applicable, on the total amount of salary sacrifice. And employees will also make income tax and national insurance savings when they join the AVC scheme, making it beneficial to all parties. My understanding was that when this was set up originally, this wasn't available, so it's being added as an extra part to the scheme. I should mention that when this report was written, because things have been changing quite a lot recently, if you look at section 5, the resources and legal considerations, it mentions that the savings for the council, this is a 5.1, savings for the council is up to 15.55% of employer contributions and 13.8% in employers' national insurance contributions, and 1.25% health and social care levy. Well, that obviously the 1.25% health and social care levy has been reversed. So, you know, that was the changes that happened over the last few weeks. So the savings, which are outlined in paragraphs 5.3 and 5.4 are actually overstated. So there will be lower levels of savings, although there will still be savings. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So the recommendations that we've got today are that Cabinet approves the adoption of the shared cost additional voluntary contributions scheme to enable employees who are local government pension scheme members to apply for salary sacrifice AVC subject to meeting the scheme criteria. 2, that Cabinet approves the amendment of the local government pension scheme review of discretionary powers under the LGPS regulations 2014, which are attached at Appendix A. That Cabinet approves that standard contracting orders are waived to enable the award of the contract to AVC Wise for a period of 3 years. And 4th, that Cabinet authorises the monitoring officer, head of legal and democratic services, to execute the contract with AVC Wise. I'm happy to move.
And I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you. And are we all okay with that? Yeah. All right, I see the ministerial visit has finished, so Eddie's joined us now. Great. Moving on, let me get my papers in order. Moving on to agenda item 12. This report is related to council tax on unoccupied dwellings for 2023-24. And this paper really covers 2 main points. One is to do with awarding discounts, and secondly, or charging premiums on empty and second homes. And I think that, you know, as we've discussed before in setting the empty home strategy, that there is a shortage of housing in the Vale of Glamorgan, and there's actually an underlying need of about 1,200 homes per annum. The council published that empty home strategy back in March 2020, and finding quality rented homes is becoming increasingly difficult, with increasing prices is incentivising landlords to sell, and the ever widening gap between local authority housing allowance rates and the market rents that can be charged is causing difficulties. Currently, I mean, it may stun you to know, there are 528 empty properties in the Vale of Glamorgan, and there are 402 second homes in the Vale of Glamorgan at the time of writing. The large number of empty properties is certainly a drain on the council's resources, requiring response to complaints and emergency works being undertaken under default, along with the enforcement work by the shared regulatory service. So this report firstly proposes that the existing practice of not providing a 50% discount on the council tax to empty homes, empty properties and second homes is continued. And secondly, that the council is opening up a consultation on charging a premium on such properties to encourage more homes to come into the general supply. Previously, local authorities have been able to charge a premium of up to 100%, but recent regulatory changes from Welsh Government have increased this to a potential 300%. For both empty properties and second homes, the council is planning to consult on a 0% premium, 100%, 200% or 300%. I think it should be mentioned that we also have schemes where if people do have empty properties and want to bring them back into productive use, then we can help. So that fits in with that. Were premiums to be charged, they would come into force from the 1st of April 2023 for empty properties and the 1st of April 2024 for second homes. This would also provide additional council tax revenues, which in part could contribute to greater engagement and enforcement work. You know, having so many homes empty is a tragedy, and it's also a tragedy for the people who would love to be living in them. So any work that we can do on this, I think, will be very valuable. The recommendations are laid out before you on page 2, but I actually do want to slightly amend them. So recommendation, I'm going to have to juggle back and forth between two pieces of paper here. The first recommendation is that Cabinet reaffirms its previous decision that no discount be allowed in 2023-24 in respect of unoccupied dwellings as defined in classes A, B and C to the council tax, and that's prescribed class of dwellings, Wales Regulations 1998 as amended, so that's sort of legal jargon. That the use of paragraph 1514(2) brackets II of the council's constitution, that's the urgency decision procedure, be authorised to enable consultation to start immediately and allow Cabinet to determine that the council enters into a period of consultation as defined in sections 12A and 12B of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, as inserted by the Housing Wales Act 2014 regarding the following. That's a council tax premium is levied in 2023-24 in respect of long-term empty properties, and secondly that a council tax premium is levied in 2024-25 in respect of second homes. And we want to use the urgency procedure so that the consultation can start, but of course the consultation would go in front of scrutiny committee, so there would be full scrutiny of the proposal as well doing that. And finally, that as I'm just mentioning, that the report be sent to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration as part of that consultation. And I'd so move.
And I'll second that, Liz.
Second that, super. Right. This is, I suppose you could call it a housekeeping report, agenda item 13, which is to do with the council tax reduction scheme. And this is simply because there has been a national council tax reduction scheme in Wales since April the 1st, 2013. which the council has adopted since that time. And we have until the 31st of January every year to take the decision. The proposal for us is to retain the national scheme with 3 existing discretions. One is extended payments up to 4 weeks. One is disregarding war widow and war disablement pensions in assessing income, and also to backdate up to 26 weeks. The adoption, which is what we've done previously, adoption of the scheme is a council function. So this recommendation is forwarded to council on the 5th of December, and that's why we will again be using paragraph 1514 of the Constitution. So this is yet again doing, implementing the council tax reduction scheme. The recommendations, and they are a little bit long, but I will go through them, are that Cabinet recommends to full council that the council tax reduction schemes and prescribed requirements Wales regulations, that's SI 2013/3029, that's the prescribed requirements regulations, and the council tax reduction schemes, brackets prescribed requirements and default scheme Wales amendment regulations 2014 SI 2014/66 be adopted. Secondly, that any amendments to regulations made by the Welsh Government are reflected in the scheme. Thirdly, that the national scheme is adopted with the following discretions, and that's that the council should continue to allow extended payments up to a maximum of 4 weeks, that the council should continue to disregard war widow and war disablement pensions in assessing income for council tax reduction, and thirdly, that the council should continue to allow backdated reductions for a period of up to 26 weeks. And finally, that the use of paragraph 1514(2) brackets II of the council's constitution, the urgent decision procedure, be authorised to allow the report to be considered at full council on the 5th of December 2022. And I'd move. Thank you, Bronwyn. Agenda item 14 is the publication of the precept dates for the authority. And this is housekeeping for this time of year, in effect. The council is the billing authority, so which basically means that we collect money on behalf of other authorities and then we pay that out to them at certain points during the year. So we're being asked to approve the payment of precepts to, firstly, the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales in 12 equal instalments on the last working day of the month, and then to approve the payments of precepts to town and community councils in 3 equal instalments on the last working days of April, August and December. And it's that straightforward. It's how we distribute money we've collected on their behalf to the Police and Crime Commissioner and town and community councils. So I would so move. Well, actually, no, I just need to go through the recommendations. I was going through my notes. I haven't actually covered the recommendations. Apologies. So yes, it's as I said, the payments due to Police and Crime Commissioner go in 12 equal instalments, and that payments due to town and community councils are paid in 3 equal instalments in April, August and December 2023. I would so move.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Everyone's happy with that. And agenda item 15. This is related to the Vale of Glamorgan Public Services Board Healthy Travel Charter Level 2. And actually the Vale Council or Vale Public Services Board developed the initial staff healthy travel charter in partnership with the Cardiff and Vale Public Health team. And the council signed up to the Level 1 Healthy Travel Charter in 2019. And good progress was made against those 14 commitments. And so what we're doing now is bringing to you level 2 of the Healthy Travel Charter. And that is actually set out on Appendix A. And there's some interesting stuff, some actually quite forward-thinking stuff, and it's things like making sustainable travel the default for business travel. And whereas we might think that, I think to actually make a statement that the default is going to be sustainable travel for us is very important. That we want to be a cycle-friendly employer and work towards accreditation on that. We will also support staff, so we'll help them to do travel planning, and we will also offer agile working to staff so that they can minimise the amount of travelling they're doing. At this point, I have to say, as part of my working life, I walked back from the Senedd to Penarth yesterday, so I get a brownie point on that. But no, I think this is all good news. I know Cabinet, we had a presentation actually, didn't we, from the Cardiff Vale Public Health team to do with active travel, and there was discussion about, I think they were saying that we need to get about 60 million car journeys moved if we're going to achieve some of the Project Zero targets that we collectively want to achieve. So this, it's something people might say, well, what does this charter mean? It's these sorts of changes that are going to help us, and I think it's important that we do our bit as an organisation. So the recommendation today is that Cabinet considers and agrees that the Council should commit to the Level 2 Healthy Travel Charter and work with PSB partners to promote healthier and sustainable travel options. And I therefore move.
And I'll second that.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And you'll be absolutely delighted to know that's my last report today. And I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places, which is very apt for this report, on the Strong Communities Grant Fund.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a break. And obviously this is the last report today. Can I just double check? Can everybody hear me okay now? Yeah?
It's still very weak, Brom.
It's still very weak, right, okay. Right, I'll try and put my headphones back in. Bear with me again, sorry, it seems to be intermittent again. Bear with me. Right, can everybody hear me now?
That's perfect.
Right, okay, lovely, thanks.
That's really good.
I'll have to get on to IT again, sorry about that. Okay, so this report is the Strong Communities Grant Fund 2020-25. So this is an update on the grant programme in the current year. And then obviously I'm looking for approval and for funding on the third round of applications to the main grant fund. Just as a little quick bit of background, in 2017, Cabinet approved the establishment of the Strong Communities Fund, and then this was introduced then, and the aim then to streamline the way in which Community Grant Fund is managed by the council, and obviously to try and help that creative use of the range of funding to support community initiatives in line then with our corporate plan. We work in in partnership then with the Waterloo Foundation, Natural Resources Wales, and also representatives of our town and community councils. And we've tried to sort of support projects which are actually trying to make a real difference to the quality of life, and actually the range of services available as well to people and communities in the Vale. It's also provided an invaluable tool in the allocation of Section 106 funding, which is also then, as a knock-on of that, has actually been used as a match funding source for other funds from Welsh Government and lottery funding. So we've actually managed to, make the fund actually go an awful long way and actually help support various organisations. In 2020, or in March 2020, Cabinet approved a new funding allocation totaling £837,533, and that was to cover from April 2020 to March 2025. Then they also made some minor operational changes, and a few amendments there, including the introduction of a simple application process for smaller grants and up to £3,000. And then also the removal of the £1,000 innovative grant fund. And then the maximum grant threshold will be changed then to 25,000. So there's a lot of work gone in between officers of the council, ourselves as cabinet members, myself and Liz there as leader, and Mark as well. And if you look then at the appendices, Appendix A, then you've got the all the applications then to the main fund, and these are grants between 3,001 and 25,000, and you can see the full list there of which have been approved, which have been refused. And we did have robust discussions around the rationale for any decisions that we did make. So just to reassure people there as well. And then also about how we could actually use the Section 106 money then to help with those initiatives as well. Appendix B is just the criteria and the guidelines, and then in Appendix C then you've got the applications then to the small grant fund, which are those up to 3,000. And again, there's the full list there of which have been approved and which have been refused and approval in part. There's a mix there as well. So I've got two recommendations. Is that Cabinet notes and considers the content of this report and appendices and approves grant funding of up to £146,860.57 and endorses the evaluation panel's recommendations as I've just outlined in Appendix A. And then the second recommendation is that Cabinet approves the roll forward of £29,991.43, which are the under committed funds from this year's Strong Communities Grant Fund, and then it'll just be rolled forward. So just to reassure people there, this money is not lost, then it's rolled forward, and that will supplement the funding available then for the next financial year. So those are the two recommendations, and I ask if they can be moved.
Thanks, Bron. Mark, you wanted to come in?
Yes, I do. And can I thank you very much for that report, Bronwyn, as Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places. I think actually, what we're doing here is trying to create more sustainable communities, and as this is a bit like a one seal moment. The grant schemes called Strong Communities, and that's what we want to do. We want to develop stronger communities by giving these organisations the funds. But obviously, the application process has to be vigorous. It's public money after all. And what I urge people, although you may not have achieved this time, do not be put off from applying again, because many organisations do apply for funding. They don't always get it first time round. Sometimes they get it a second time round. But also, the officers I know do support the application process very well, very thoroughly, and they will give you very good expert advice. So please use officers. And if you look at where they come from, the Vale Glamorgan needs funds that's approved, or not as the case would be, they're all over the Vale. So we are the Vale Glamorgan. We're not just one particular area. We represent different areas, but in fact, this is all about Vale-wide schemes in many cases, and there are some really good initiatives there. And what I urge people is to do not be put off by the process and to apply again if you didn't get it. And also, I as a cabinet member, and I'm sure many other cabinet members would like to see the results of these applications. So please invite us to see some of these improved places or even new activities that will take place as a result of this fund. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, and if I can just make a couple of comments, I was actually thinking, I looked at the date in the report. I mean, we established this in 2017, didn't we? And in April, and since that time, nearly 837,000 has been distributed to support local organisations and groups. And in some ways, it's almost like, well, do we change the name of it rather than strong communities? It's strengthening communities, because by the work that the team does, and this is a team that are hugely skilled at this sort of work in terms of building capacity. Historically, they've operated because they were EU funded down in the rural Vale, but they will be working across the Vale. They will be the Creative Communities team, and so they are available to provide advice and support to people. They know all about things like community mapping. They've been involved in the Esplanade consultation because they are skilled at communicating with people, and they will be involved in other initiatives around the Vale. So I think it's a super team. It's a really super fund, because it provides not only funding but support. And when you're talking, Mark, about wanting to see the outcomes, what you can do for the previous schemes is they always write up case studies, and so those case studies are published online, and there are also YouTube videos of a lot of them. But certainly, I'm sure that the team would be very delighted to organise visits for you, and it's a really worthwhile trip to go and visit some of the schemes. I don't think anyone else has, so I'd be absolutely delighted to second the recommendations. And from everybody nodding like mad, I'm assuming that we're all in agreement.
Okay, thanks, Ellen.
So, thank you. So I don't have any items that are urgent, and I don't have any that are part 2. So on that note, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you all for your attendance, and see you all hopefully very soon.